All right. What is up? We're trying this again.
Is it just me and you, or
We never know. We never know. We don't think. No, I think this is a live thing. I think that we're good.
seriously this time?
I mean, we never know. Let's act like it's live.
Okay.
How about that?
Oh, I see us. Okay,
we
we
see
are live. Okay. Woo.
What's up, everybody? Man, this is exciting. I mean, we're here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this is a normal thing, but this is a little bit of an Abby normal thing, in the words of Young Frankenstein, a movie that was before your time.
Now, would that be something you might be interested in?
It's like the conglomeration of two different worlds. This is awesome.
I feel like this is a bit of a Beato intro here. Rachel Morgan says it looks and sounds great.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, they're just like on Monday.
Of course it would. Why wouldn't it? What's going on, Peter?
Not much, man. Good to see you. We've been seeing each other in various forms. We made some music together last night.
Oh man, that was so fun. Just
That
shout
was
out to
awesome.
everybody who was at that concert. 442's Peter Martin, Brian Owens. That was great.
Yep.
Yeah, we had a great time. Holiday Spectacular.
It was
Although
spectacular.
we call it Holiday Spectacular, I think every tune had the word Christmas in it. So I don't know
It
how
was
you can.
Christmas heavy,
Yeah.
but you know what? It's all good, man. It's fun music, and I love you. You did a bunch of arrangements that I played before, and so they've been kind of marinating over the years. Somehow, I was still making some mistakes on some of them, but
Man.
that's why it's good we're talking about a beginner's course today.
That's Christmas though, right? Like we play these same songs our whole lives every December, and every December I'm like, how does Chestnuts go really? How does it
right.
go?
Well, it's kind of like the Christmas cards. It's like you're writing stuff to certain people, and you're like, wait, who's this again? Because it just comes around long enough.
Yeah.
Or like playing the tune, the tunes like for solo piano gigs or whatever it is we're doing. There's definitely something to that. But this is exciting today because we're doing an open house. You did an open house on, I believe it was I jumped in for a minute, but you were like a machine. You were on there for hours, several hours, which we're not going to
2 hours. Technically hours, because there were
right.
two of them. Yeah.
But it was really fun. Folks seem to really enjoy it, and it's such a great situation in order to, I think, answer questions and just kind of in real time leverage this great, live platform that we have. Say hello to folks, but mainly kind of we're focusing in on Jazz Piano for Beginners because it's been our most popular course. We have a new version of it that's just come out, and we have a lot of questions about it.
That's right.
So we're going to try to sort of nail all those things today, and hopefully inspire some of you that picked it up, or are thinking about picking it up, to really make sure that it's like the right thing for you. Because if you come into our programs, I think with the right course at the beginning, it really sets the tone. Elements of Jazz Piano is something that a lot of people have come in on and they really loved it because it's such a cool course. But for some folks, it's just a little bit out of reach.
Yep.
And we know that Jazz Piano for Beginners leads really good to there. So if you've been messing with Elements of Jazz Piano, want to go a little bit more foundational, this could be a place to go, right?
Well, why don't we address people who might be saying like, well, wait a minute, Jazz Piano for Beginners. I've seen this on your website now for 5 years.
Right.
Why are we launching this now? Because we're actually rebooting Jazz Piano for Beginners. It was the very first course that we made here at Open Studio that wasn't your jazz piano method.
Yes.
Right? That wasn't the weekly lessons. It was an actual like starting and ending course.
Yep.
And so we thought that it would be fun to, with all that we've learned in the past 5 years of how to make this and how to help people and what people need for this kind of thing. We thought it'd be fun to reboot it. We tossed around ideas for the better part of a global pandemic.
Yes.
And then finally, a few months ago, we decided to actually record what we've been talking about, and we added things like guided practice sessions, some ear training stuff. We kind of we funneled everything down, made it a lot more compact, the course, and I think an easier course to digest for a lot, especially for beginners. The original one had 26 lessons that were all great, but we've kind of condensed that down to 10 and then 12 guided practice sessions.
Would you say we're kind of dealing with quality over quantity this time around?
But there's still a lot of there's still a lot of quantity. It's just their energy is in a different place. It's a little more focused quantity.
Right. Yeah, and I think that the general theme of this is what we try to do is, because folks really enjoyed the first course and made progress, like verifiable progress, where they're like, wow, I finally learned how to play the blues, to what is the shell, like what is swing, like it kind of demystified some things, if nothing else, that we were very careful. And part of the reason we were reticent to redo it is we didn't want to lose any of the magic that was, I think, in that original one, but we wanted to improve it. So that's always a challenge. It's like, you have the restaurant with some great dishes, but you can't serve the same ones forever. How do you keep those but add some other things? But what we found was that a little bit of curation of the ideas, and there was a few things in the original Jazz Piano for Beginners that I think that we actually covered really well, better in elements of jazz piano and maybe a little bit more intermediate. So we didn't totally strip those away, but we made them more introductory now. So hopefully the flow will be the same. But the concepts stayed the same. I mean, like, simplify and isolate, time to swing from the beginning, groove, elements, and all those kinds of things. We really still lean into that. And I think the production's just better. It's more pleasant.
Well, why don't we take folks on just a brief tour here of what the course page looks like. This will be sort of the open part of our open house.
Yeah.
And then we have a bunch of questions already, Peter, in the chat here. So let's just have a look at what this dashboard looks like. And if you've had our old Jazz Piano for Beginners course, which if you did buy the 2016 version of this, you'll still have this on your dashboard for quite a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you're the owner of the older, like if you bought a lifetime version, of course you have access to that as a legacy. And then
we're not monsters here.
We're not monsters, but we've just updated it here. So you can see here, these are 10 lessons to start off with, and a lot of the same concepts from the first course, just re-recorded and kind of reimagined, starting with, oh yeah, everybody's favorite, the PM Blues. What I mean?
I think I improved on this tune a little. You know what? The sound's a little better. It's a better piano.
You're playing it more confidently.
The other one was the premiere version.
Yeah.
Let's learn the blues.
Now, but in general, the production is.
Welcome in, fam. Much love.
The production is much better on this version as well. The audio and the visual. Shout out to Andy Steven for helping us set up the visual here. Look at that. Look at that celesta in the background, popping.
It's illuminated.
It's illuminated
like
behind
it's some
you.
kind of celestial chant behind my ear there. I love it.
It looks great. So let's just break down a little bit of the flow here. So we do a similar flow from the old course. We've just trimmed off some of the stuff that I think was a little bit superfluous. So we start with a bunch of C blues, which is a great place for a beginner to start because you can deal with things like playing a melody, learning about the blues scale, as well as dominant scales, other scales, learning about very simple voicings, but more importantly, learning about a couple of key concepts that are repeated over and over again in all of Open Studio courses, which are listen and imitate, simplify and isolate. Those two things are really like the North Star for everything we do. And so we start you off here, or try to start you off with those concepts straight away.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I forgot that I donned a sport coat, a classic casual sport coat for the occasion, trying to dress it up a little, but not too much.
Jeans and the sport coat. It's like, are we hanging out? Are we grabbing a beer? Or are we going to a business meeting?
We're doing both. We're ready for anything, which is what Jazz Piano for Beginners. But I mean, C blues. I mean, so many. You got F blues, you got B flat. There's a lot of different places to start. I think I learned an F blues actually first, and I wish I'd learned a C blues. It's like sometimes how do we balance when you're starting out? You want to have some challenges, but you want to be able to simplify and isolate certain concepts in a way that's not going to be frustrating. And so I look back to sort of my background with the music, and we've talked with yours a lot, but then mainly folks that went through the first course and like things that worked and things possibly that didn't. And I think everything kind of worked. It was just a matter of like, is it too much too soon,
Yep.
And I mean,
no, here we're talking more about like what are some things that get me playing right now? Some basic voicings. How do I improvise just to get started? Even things like how to swing and how to deal with swing and practice swing is there too. And then if you notice, the thing that wasn't in the first course at all that we have here are these guided practice sessions that I added, which is my contribution to the whole affair here. Really taking each of your lessons, Peter, and then going a step further and saying, let's actually practice this stuff together. Right. And I came up with a bunch of different etudes, exercises, a little bit of hand-holding, a little bit of metronome work, some ear training work with the students so that they can sort of learn these concepts from you as you teach and give examples of playing. And then we can kind of talk about, well, how do we actually work on this?
Yeah.
And I talk about how to work on working on it too, like how to approach your practice, and you can learn how to do that from those two. So.
Well, and it's so great because when we did the first version of the course, I made a lot of assumptions like, okay, I'm laying this out, and I would talk about now go practice this, and the guided practice session really are the missing link in a lot of ways to that hand holding. I mean, you still got to put in that time at the piano, but it's kind of like affirmation of what you learn, but then it's specifically in case you didn't fully understand the concept or catch what's going on. It's like, well, this is what I need to practice from that. The concept's there. And a lot of times you can hear a concept and you can feel a concept like swing or the blues or whatever before you can actually kind of, understand it and certainly do it yourself. So this is that part that if you aren't the perfect student, which none of us really are, where it's like, okay, wait, how do I actually practice this? Like, what do I actually practice? Like, I understand the promised land.
Good.
Yeah. No, I like that. This
Actually,
good.
this is
Let's show them. Don't
guided
tell them.
practice session number 2 for the Jazz Piano for Beginners course. Let's start with our chromatic warm-up again, 85 beats per minute today. You know how much I love a chromatic warm-up.
Show them how they can go, because for some reason, a lot of folks, show them how you can go full screen
Check
on
your
that.
mirrors before we get
For
started.
the
Make sure
folks,
your
look at
right
that little button. Bang.
Covering just above your
If that's not
pedal.
enough
We're not
Adam
gonna
for
use
you,
the
that's
sustain
Doppio
pedal.
Adam.
But we
I'm
need
not
to
calling you a
practice
Doppio.
getting in these good positions. Left foot is just under your That's seat. right. So
relax your.
That's what we're doing there. We're actually working with you. And so this is what we've discovered, Peter, over the last 5 years that we definitely didn't have in 2016 is this idea of taking a concept and instead of saying, let's do 26 different topics and maybe overwhelm, especially like a beginner, let's do 10 different things and then work on it in 3 different ways.
Right.
That idea is something that I think.
Well, I think too, because we fleshed out, the places that folks were going to go from here, to the later courses, it just is easier, like what you're learning in Jazz Piano for Beginners, like it's a little bit more defined in terms of going from point A to point Z, but maybe more like point A to point D, and then you pick it up, with the next course. And we can go a little bit deeper, but really give that clarity on what to practice. So important.
So important. So let's go through here just the brief lesson list.
Yeah.
So we start off with the PM blues.
Yeah. And you'll notice the reason that I play at the beginning, I did this in the original too, that's about, listen and imitate. It's like to really set the tone. If you've ever if you remember going to like language class when you're in high school or middle school or elementary school, if you were lucky enough to, or even if you're an adult and you go to learn a foreign language, really good teachers, when you walk in the first day, they're not talking to you in English or whatever. They're talking in that language.
Exactly.
They're like, bonjour. You're like, wait, you haven't taught me yet. And they're like, quoi? Like they force you into that.
Listen and imitate.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so that's about, every time I watch the different things that we do, I'm never like, oh, I should have played less. It's always like play more, because that's where the magic happens, when you hear what to do and you start to try it and imitate it. And how close is that? And I really tried to keep it within the realm of what you can do. Not the very first minute you start the course, but within a few days of starting it.
Yeah, so the first 3 lessons are all on the C blues, but in 3 different ways. Just the introduction to what the blues form is and to the melody that you compose, the PM blues, which is in itself a valuable lesson. And the second,
it's 2 things. It's PM for Peter Marr, but it's more PM, like it's in the afternoon and evening. If you're not a morning person, this is the blues for you.
Got it. And then the second lesson, same tune, but now dealing with improvisation and how to take that melody and spin some improvisation, how to take various scales and start your improvisation journey. And then the third lesson is voicings, how to make basic chords over that same form.
Yeah.
Then by the 4th lesson, we're dealing with something that I think is this is one of my favorite lessons. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on this. That's the lesson on swing, because you give some killing examples here.
Let's talk about swing now.
Let's watch a little.
Swing is so important to play jazz because it's the predominant groove that we use as we play jazz. In all the lessons you've seen so far, I'm generally using a swing groove. Now, swing there's a lot of importance placed on it to know how to swing, what is swing, is the swinging, and it doesn't need to be as hard as you maybe heard it is before. The main thing is it is a feeling. So it's a part of a language that evokes a certain type of feeling for the listener and for the player. And so we don't need to overanalyze it, but we do need to be able to identify it and be able to imitate it and try to replicate it in our own playing. So before we talk about it too much, let's listen to an example of some swing. This is Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong.
And now Louis Armstrong and the Duke. Let's hear it for them.
You like swing?
That's something I'm into.
transcribe it and look at the music.
Swing a mathematical equation. Relax, simple. Yeah, exactly. Just watch Duke's body while he plays and swings. That's why we have a video on this.
Totally.
I mean, there's a lot of audio we could have used.
You got to dance your way to it.
Just the relaxed demeanor.
Ever watch Monk play? The guy's dancing the whole time.
Like, he actually gets up and
He actually gets up in there. But even then, when he's sitting at the piano, his foot is like doing this.
Rich is right, yeah, it is Louis Armstrong. Now, everybody from Orleans always called it Louis Armstrong. The airport's named Louis Armstrong Airport.
Yeah.
International.
Love Duke's playing.
Duke Ellington was a huge influence on McCoy Tyner. You know, like the left hand stuff. People folks don't realize what an influence he was.
I was going to say, according to a lot of high school band directors, his voicings are way in the bass player's way. But they sound great.
So you might be wondering, how could we have some of the swingingest stuff ever, some of the most sophisticated foundational jazz music that exists, especially with video back to this day and age, on a beginner course? But this is what we're trying to convey, is that the feeling, the spirit of the music, which is really on the beginner level best understood and exemplified through the groove, through that swing feel.
100%.
Like, that's actually the only part. Like, you notice I don't go through and break down like Louis Armstrong's harmonic conception over this tune, because it's super advanced. But his sense of swing is both very simplistic, very beginner, very intermediate, it's everything at one time. Like, that's the one part that you actually can grasp on from the beginning. Now, does that mean you can swing like Louis Armstrong after you finish lesson one? No, you have to go to the GPS to do that. But you can connect with the spirit of that music, and that's going to accelerate not only your progress as you move through this, your jazz piano journey, but it's going to accelerate your passion, and it's going to get you into that kind of practice where it's like 2 hours goes by and you're like, oh my God, I thought it was like 10 minutes, because you're connecting with this spirit. You're not connecting with a mathematical equation of like, this is swing, dang, dang, ta, ta, stupid, bo, bo, ba, bo, do. No, it's 30% less,
Yeah.
No, just play like that, like Louis Armstrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we roll this right into our first question from
Yes.
we can do a little Q&A session here about the course, or about really anything. And right at the top, Peter, I don't know if you can bring comments up, but Strat 1227, right at the top of our question.
I cannot bring comments up,
at the
I'm
chat.
sorry. We're not. We're set up for many things, but not that today. Sorry.
But Strat 1227 says, I've finished jazz piano for beginners and I feel like I have a good foundation, but I don't feel quote unquote musical still. I feel like I can learn specific ways to play a tune, but it's not quote unquote playful. How can I get to where I feel like I'm creating music when I sit at the piano and not just repeating back voicings and lines that I've learned or been taught? So I think this is the disconnect between the way that a lot of music, especially contemporary music, is learned in the past 150 years or so, and a traditional music education, right? Traditionally, there was this information wall. There's this information gate. And they're gatekeepers that are usually like, if you know this, now you can do this, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand counterpoint if you want to be able to write music. You have to be able to have this much facility and play this concerto if you want to play the violin. Like that, this gatekeeping of you need this to do this. And that carries over into our modern musical life, but that's not actually the case of how jazz or a lot of other contemporary music is done. So the thing you have to understand, Strat, is you already have the playful nature of a human already in you. You already have the musical soul of a person ready to do whatever you want to do. You don't need to learn anything new to gain that. In fact, that can't be taken away from you. That can't be taught to you. That can't be given to you. You have that spark inside of you already. So if you think about it like, when do I get to be playful? It just feels like I'm regurgitating scales. That's always going to be a part of it. As we put information into the system of our humanness, like it takes a while for it to be absorbed. But I bet, Strat, that there are concepts that you already kind of know really well on your own, even maybe stuff you've picked out yourself, actually likely stuff you've picked out yourself, likely stuff you've heard on a record or on the radio and picked up yourself, and that you can go and be playful with it and have fun with it and not think too much about it. But the concepts that you're getting from Jazz Piano for Beginners or any other course or maybe any other YouTube video or anything like that, there's this disconnect, like, well, I've got to really absorb this information so why can't I be playful with it yet? Well, you can. You just have to be able to understand it at a level that connects with your inner musical spark, that connects with your humanness. And the idea that there's like a finish line to that, or there's a gate that you have to pass through, or that there's some kind of moment where it's like, I get it, and now I can be free. That's an illusion. Like you can do that without any new information, and even this new information that you might not recall perfectly every time, right? You might not be able to just have it come up to the surface of your playing, and it feels like it's playful because you're thinking about it. Because it's not playful. You're not being true to what's going on. That work, though, is something that's part of working on being a musician. And when I mean that work of recognizing that inner musician is already there. It's already complete. It's ready to go. That person that wants to connect with other people, that playful nature, that musical nature is there. And no one can add anything to that. No one can take that away. Any information you put through that filter is just more information that needs to be absorbed.
Well, that's what I call a complete answer. Thank you very much. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Awesome. Okay. There's really nothing else I can add to that. I think that's such such great stuff.
I just want to, so Colleen, who's of course, longtime Open Studio Pro, says, Strat, just keep playing for hours and weeks and days and months and years. That sounds like it's like, oh, yeah, well, obviously, but Colleen is spot on here. Like, Strat, there's no moment where it's like, oh, and now I'm a great musician. What musicians do is just work on the stuff. Right. And we just learn to have joy in all of it, including the struggle of learning new things, including the struggle of feeling like I'm not being playful. That's all part of it. And so when you kind of learn to have joy in that, then that playful nature comes out without you even thinking about it.
Right. And, it's a continuum. It's a spectrum. It's not a, as you say, it's like you don't cross over some threshold or Rubicon at a certain point. It's the journey. And so when we talk about connecting with, the language of the masters, but like at this point, like the swing and the feel and the spirit of the music of the masters, like that's something we can all hold on to. So that can be an entry point to that playful area. And then it's like, if yesterday you never felt like you were playful at all in your practice, or like, maybe you're working on a certain tune, PM blues, whatever, and then you go to kind of play it, maybe you just get a couple of notes or one phrase. It's like, wow, that actually was fun, playful, whatever you want to call it. Then that's like progress. Maybe the next day it's a couple, and then the next day might be none, but that's not going backwards. It's just kind of the way this thing works. The same way you'll have not a lot of progress sometimes, you also have an avalanche certain days. So you just have to be open to that, open to the process, and just open to the journey and like having fun as you go along.
Totally.
So I do have a couple here that I know I said I couldn't pull it up, but would this interest you?
Oh my gosh, look at this guy.
Would that be something that would interest you?
Where's this from?
This is from the chat right here. Yeah.
Sweet.
So Alan says, should I concentrate on certain keys like E flat major, B flat major, F major, G major, A flat major, and ignore other keys like B major, A major, E major, which don't seem to figure in jazz tunes? Well, the first thing, that's funny because we were playing with a bunch of string players last night. And if you try to avoid, like, strings as in not piano strings, violin, cello, viola, if you try to avoid B major, A major, and E major, you're going to piss them off a lot.
Yeah, you're not going to.
That's their sweet spot.
You're not going to be playing with the 442s very
That's
much.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that probably Alan's asking, should you do these keys that are more likely, say, for blues and playing with brass instruments, I guess, trumpet, or even like saxophone and stuff that are more likely to be played, although he's got G major in there too, so I'm not sure. But I don't think at the beginner level, doing stuff in like C, F, G, like one accidental is great. Like this is not, somebody asked me, one of our, somebody who's going through Jazz Piano for Beginners, who's a really good drummer up in New York, and I saw him when I was at the Vanguard. It was like, okay, so once I get the PM blues down, should I learn in all 12 keys before I go on to the next lesson? I was like, did I say that in there? I mean, like, of course, if you want to be Mr. or Mrs. Comprehensive, go for it.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's going to really trip you up. And so I think concentrating on any keys is not what it's about at this level, right?
I think do what you can do comfortably at first, Alan. Like whatever gets you comfortable practicing, you're going to run into it fairly soon. Like even a beginner tune, like Have You Met Miss Jones?
Yep.
Or All the Things You Are, or Star Eyes.
Right.
It's going to take you to key
flat. It's going to take you somewhere else.
It's going to take you to D flat.
Yeah.
It's going to take you to G flat. Like those tunes are built to kind of cycle through keys, and those are not beginner tunes, but those are certainly like you need to know those to go to jam sessions, right?
Right.
So you're going to be confronted with keys like D flat and G flat and A and B eventually anyway.
Yeah.
So I would start, of course, the keys you mentioned. That's a great starting place, but don't sleep on those maybe less played keys. Even like a key like D flat, which you might think is intimidating because just the sheer amount of flats.
Yeah.
There's so many standards that people play in the key of D flat. Body and Soul, like Lush Life, like stuff like that you're gonna want to spend some time in there. And I think you're gonna find too, Alan, that actually the more time you spend in those keys eventually, and I'm not saying like you have to go through everything in all 12 keys first, but when you do spend time in those keys, they make your playing in B flat and F and E flat way better. Like you have more contextual understanding, and then you're going to find that you love some of those keys. Like I love the key of B so much.
Oh yeah.
It's so much fun to play. It's hard.
Certain things lay really well on the
certain things I don't see it as clearly as I see B flat or whatever.
You think Stevie Wonder likes G flat major?
Stevie Wonder loves G flat because it feels so good, but also it sounds so good.
Yeah.
Those relationships are different for every key in our imperfect system.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to find that some of those just sound really great on certain tunes.
Cool. Well, I got another one queued up. Are you ready to go? Look at Adam. He's in an ask and answer mood.
I'm loving
right
this,
now.
man. I'm loving this.
Blues Boy Nicky says, I began taking classical lessons in September. How would you recommend keeping up with both classical and jazz practice?
That's a good question.
Yeah, this is a good thing. And this one's kind of like a lot of things about how to practice is I like to look at it as sort of a percentage thing as opposed to you need to spend this amount of time, because if you're, I'm presuming that keeping up with practicing classical and jazz, you probably are keeping up with your life too, like either a job or a family or yard work. We all have a lot of different things, so it's a little hard to answer not knowing how much time you have, but I think it's definitely possible and can even be complementary and, dare I say, relatively simple and easy to do to keep them both going. As long as we don't get into this thing, like a lot of people be like, the classical is going to mess up your jazz and the jazz is going to mess up your classical. I don't believe that. I've seen too many examples. I mean, look, anything can mess up certain things, but it's like, you mow your lawn and then you blow the things and put them in a bag and take them out. If you try to put the things in the bag first and then mow your lawn, it's going to mess it up. And you can be like, well, blowing doesn't work with, no, you got to do it.
It's just music, man.
It's just music.
It's just
you got to think about it the right way and you got to do it the right way. But there's so many advantages for both, I would say, in terms of classical, playing in different keys, because we have these specific, especially if you think about, technical practice, scales, arpeggios, those kinds of things, ways to practice those. That's going to really be a foundation as you do start to learn tunes in new keys, or even like we have Yardbird Suite as part of Jazz Piano for Beginners, I believe, is kind of our, is it Yardbird Suite, right?
Yeah.
And partly we did this because it's in C. It gives a little bit of the bebop language. It's one of the simpler, more beginner bebop tunes. But look at that. It immediately goes to E flat, actually.
Yeah.
So it gives you a little bit of that. So when you're doing your classical practice, if you're like, and you're doing all your scales, you've got a little bit of E flat diatonic kind of already in your hands, most likely. So I think it helps there. But I would just say that the more different things that you're trying to do in order to keep things like simple and effective and really essential, is that you have to have a plan. You know what I mean? Like if you're just, if you're independently wealthy and all you're doing is practicing jazz every day and you just and you have like a butler and a maid and a cook, like you don't have to really have a plan. You just kind of roll out of bed when you want. saunter over to the piano and just practice as the spirit moves you, right?
Yeah.
But we're not all like Adam Manis. Some of us have a different lifestyle.
Knew that was where I was going. I don't saunter as much anymore. No, you know what I will say about this too, Blues Boy Nicky, great name there, fun to say, is that as a for your jazz piano stuff, like you remember, you're also a composer, right? Being an improviser means being a composer. So there's a lot to be learned from a lot of classical composers. They thought about that stuff a lot, right? So like we played that concert last night. We did some Tchaikovsky, our version, right, of Dance of the Sugar Plum.
That's the way I played it, was Sugar Plum. I was
Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. But listen, there's a spot in there where I was like, oh, I'm stealing that for my improvisation as a bit of a substitution to a 5 chord, right? This part here, right? So the keys in the tune's in the key of E minor, right? And there's a section where it's just moving around the 5, but it's this, right? So it's B7, right? That's our target, B7, D7, B7 for that inversion. Next inversion, F major 7, B7, right? So D7, B7, F major 7. It's all surrounding this B7. A augmented, B major triad, and then D7. So that section there, of course, you know that from Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. But this is all like, if I was on a B7, right? If we're doing some kind of like E minor burnout, which is what the way we kind of do it,
burning out
right?
in Moscow.
And then we start hanging out on the 5. You know, I'm gonna start thinking substitution wise. Right, D7 to B7, F major 7. To B7, A half diminished to B7.
Yeah.
That's going to give me like all these different substitution options. I learned that from Peter Ilyich.
Yeah, himself. Pater,
Pater,
right?
yeah.
That's great. All right, we've got, let's see, boom, boom, boom. This might be a new one. Our buddy Joe from H-Town. Is the structure of JPB, also Jazz Piano for Beginners, to watch all of Peter's lessons, then do the GPS? I guess he means as to watch one lesson and then watch the corollary GPS. This was a question somebody else asked me about too. And
yeah, and
there's 2 ways to do it.
There's a little direction there that we give where I think if I were to take it, I would watch all of Peter's lessons 10 in a row and then hit the GPSs, because with the GPSs, I don't do a direct one-to-one correlation.
Right.
I kind of draw from different lessons that you give. So you might even take Peter's course, like all the videos, once or twice or 3 times, and then hit the GPSs as you see fit. Now, you could also just start mixing in GPSs. Like I give a little bit of instruction on things as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're going to be lost in the water there. Like you're going to understand what's going on. So really, it's whatever you want to do. If I were to do it, if I were to give a direction to it, and I think we do give in the wording of it, I would take all of Peter's first and then all of the GPSs.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, exactly. Because we wanted to keep that. We didn't want it to be so strict where there wasn't instruction in the GPS and there wasn't things to practice and even play along with in the lessons, which there is as well. So we wanted there to be a little bit of cross-pollinization, as it were. All right. Here we go from Giles. I'm a beginner at jazz piano and have been learning so much from your beginners courses. I also love the sound slice transcription you guys share. Any advice on how to work best with transcriptions?
Yeah, can I feel that one?
Please.
So, Giles, if you want to work best with the transcriptions, so depending on what you're working on, I would see what the transcription is, right? So if it's a transcription of a performance, I would first not look at that transcription. I would say, okay, you know what, I'm going to try to transcribe part of this, maybe just 4 bars of whatever this is, and transcribe it yourself. And by transcribe it, I mean learn it by ear. Play along with the video that you're trying to learn, and see if you can figure out what Peter's playing with your ear. Then, once you think you have it, go check it against the transcription. That's the best way you could use those transcriptions. Just reading, like, you know, we all have, I'm sure you've been suckered into, you buy these books of Oscar Peterson transcriptions or whatever, and you're like, oh, this is it. I'm going to learn how to play like Oscar Peterson. Is that the way that happens?
Yes, exactly.
No, never. Never, Peter, is the answer. Never. That's not. The best way to learn how to play like Oscar Peterson or Bill Evans or Peter Martin is to learn it by ear and to play along with them, because you're going to get all this information that you can't get just with the written page. So, guys, I would say the first way to do it is to just use your ear and then use the transcription as a reference. Now, if you want to get a little deeper, you might use it as something that you can analyze yourself. So you can look at like, okay, well, here's Peter's playing a C blues here. Oh, and he does this shape, which is like a G minor triad. Oh, that's interesting. Well, now I know that on a C7 chord, maybe a G minor triad is an option for me, right? To play, to improvise around with. That's another way you can do that, is to sort of look at it in a very broken down analytical way. But that's not necessarily going to get you playing like Peter Martin as much as learning it by ear, playing along with the recordings.
Yeah. And, I would just add that, you can think about transcriptions as like the Google Maps or whatever of getting somewhere. So like if the best is to have somebody to tell you how do I get there? Like, your way around some things. And this is the biggest mindset challenge for anyone starting to play jazz, is that most people that come to this course can play the piano.
Yep.
And some very well, especially classical or whatever. And so you feel like, oh, I'm such a beginner in jazz. And you are a beginner in jazz, but you're not a beginner necessarily as a pianist, right? So your way around. So it'd be like if I asked you, Adam, you're telling me, oh, go to this address in St. Louis. And I'm like, oh, I've never been there. But I have been around St. Louis. I have been around. So if I throw out everything that I know and just put on a neophyte, I don't even know how to drive the car, I'm only going to follow these Google directions with the address, and I'm not going to look up, I'm going to end up in an accident, as opposed to say, okay, maybe you explain it to me. That's like listening to the recording or trying to learn it by ear. And you're like, no, you're going to go down there, and when you see this building, you know that building? Oh yeah, no, I know that. Okay, turn right there. And then, if it's later in the afternoon, you're going to go towards the sun, like things that we actually understand and know, not just something blindly telling us like the Google Maps. Now,
totally.
Sometimes you don't know where you are and you need a Google Map. Like, you're totally lost and it's going to guide you there. But better to kind of go by feel and then use that for when you do get lost. Like, let me get back on track or whatever. So now, if you just follow the Google Maps or just follow the transcription blindly, you're going to get, especially if you're a good reader and kind of, have a good enough facility to play what you're reading, you're going to feel like you're getting that transcription, that playing learned quicker than if you'd gone sort of by feel and used it as more of a, an aid in addition.
But it's not going to be deeper, though.
It's not going to be deeper. So you'll get there quicker in terms of time, but in terms of that deep understanding and then picking up this stuff we're talking about that can't be in the notation, like swing and feel and phrasing,
accents,
you're going to be behind the curve on that because you're going to be focused. Yeah, you're going to be focused on that. So I think that, using it as a helper is the way to go.
There's a really poignant comment here from Richard. I don't know if you picked that up. How to let go of the beginner phase.
I might have. Okay, hold on a second. Let's see. I think we're thinking the same way, my friend.
Yeah.
Let me just put it up here. And we'll do that one next. Well-oiled machine. That's how we do it.
Impressive, man. There it is. How to let go of the beginner phase and feel confident in your playing, knowing how less one actually knows. It seems like I'll always be a beginner somehow. So, and already some people are some Open Studio members are answering in the way that I love it, because man, we got such a great culture here of like Joe saying we are all beginners in a way. Colleen says perfectly, that's great because you will always be learning new stuff.
Yes.
That's that beginner's mind, right?
Yep.
That's a Zen philosophy, actually, is
Absolutely.
beginner mind. So nothing wrong with even considering yourself a beginner. But Richard, I would just, if you don't have a regular place to play with human beings, like the way to get out of the student mindset is to actually do it. Like if we were to go to college and go for architecture, right? Yeah, you got to learn how to draft up blueprints and how to design and structural things and the art of it, lines and shapes and all that stuff, materials. But then there comes a point where you have to design a building. Like you just have to go and do it, right? So Richard, if you don't have a regular experience of playing with other people, and that could be starting out at jam sessions or trying to get gigs and just trying to play as much as possible in the beginning, you're not going to get as good as you probably think you should be. And you might still feel like a beginner because you don't have the experience of actually doing what you're trying to do, which is perform, right? So if you feel like, and the idea of knowing less than one actually knows, again, is like that's an information problem, and that's not your problem. Like information will always be something that is there to be.
Can you
gained.
information your way to becoming a better player?
I'm so glad you asked. No, you cannot information your way to becoming a better player. So just don't worry about the information. Nobody knows what you know, and you'll never know everything that everybody else knows. So that's something that we're constantly working on. We're constantly building our house on new information. But again, like that spark of being an artist, that spark of being a musician is something that can only be nurtured by actually doing it, by actually playing, actually getting out and playing with other humans, playing this music in a way that it was meant to be. This was called social music by its pioneers for a reason. Like it's meant to be a conversation between you and the players on stage. It's meant to be a conversation between you and the people in the audience. So whatever skill level you're at, you are not too young to go and make a fool of yourself, or not too beginner to go and make a fool of yourself in front of other people. We both had to do it, Peter. Like as great as you are, I'm sure there was a time where you were 12 years old and you had to go play with some people and you sounded not like you do now. Like you have to get through that. You just have to do it. You know, it's like a songwriter will tell you, you have to write about 50 terrible songs before you write one decent one, even like one really good one, you know, not to mention one really good one.
No, it's great. I mean, I think I'm just looking at this playing, knowing how less one actually knows. That's part of being at the beginner phase in terms of information. But what we can do and what we encourage in this course, and just really kind of the open studio way, I think, is that you can, like, let's focus less on what information we don't know and think more about, like, our connection with the music and, like, the things that we're starting to grasp, even if it's on a very simple level. So when we talk about groove and feel and phrasing, things that you can kind of have some breakout moments a lot quicker and a lot more surprisingly than you can about understanding advanced, you know, turtle. What is it? I don't even know what it's called. Turtle harmony? Turtle, like poking his head.
I have no idea what you're talking
about. Turtile or something. I saw somebody ask me, like, can you explain turtle? I was like, no, because I don't know what it is.
No idea what it is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I play it, maybe I don't. I literally don't know what that word means. It sounds cool, though, you know. But it's like a lot of that stuff is very complex, but if you don't have the foundations of groove and swing and feel and joy in the music, it's going to be a little bit lost on you. It's not going to be lost on you. It's just going to come out in a way that sounds like it's information flowing instead of music flowing. So it's better not to jump to that anyway. So sometimes, like, knowing less is actually a great place to be. So when we talk about keeping that beginner's or childlike spirit, like, a lot of times that means is like not coming to music, and especially talking about playing performance situations, like, oh, I know all this, I can do. Like, we've all been around people like that. They're good musicians, but they come in like, why am I even doing this? You know, inevitably they mess something up, which is hilarious. But the childlike spirit is like, it's like wonderment and joy. And so I think that's really very much of the beginner phase. What happens is, like, when we're trying to learn something as adults, we feel like, oh, if we're like a child, like, we have to take this more seriously. And so children seem like they aren't taking something seriously, but you take a little kid that wants to learn something or is interested in something or wants to, like, get at some food or, like, something they're passionate about, they're pretty serious. I mean, they might be like, but I mean, like, they're going to work at that thing. You know, my dogs, once they get that certain bone and they want to get inside to whatever's in there, I mean, they go at that thing with, like, otherwise they can't concentrate on anything for more than 2 seconds. All of a sudden they've got this. So, always be a beginner somehow. I would encourage that. I would revel in that. I would lean into that. The information will come, you know, but the joy and the swing and the groove can start today.
And beginner's mind is so important. I love here Juan Diaz, who's an Open Studio Pro member, says, I make a fool out of myself all the time, LOL. And what he's referencing here is Juan is often very quick to volunteer to play for Open Studio Pro members. He's playing this Friday for a masterclass, playing for Jeffrey Keyser, which is, it takes a lot of courage to go play in front of a big group that we're going to have on Zoom and in front of a player like Jeffrey Keyser, and you're going to be there. But Juan he's fearless in that. I mean, I'm sure he has fear, but he's seemingly fearless in that regard.
Jeff
and
Keyser's going to eat him alive.
Yeah, no, he's not. You know what's awesome though, Peter, is Juan sounds dope, man. Juan is getting good, and he's getting good fast because he keeps putting himself out there. He keeps, quote unquote, making a fool out of himself. He doesn't. Everybody loves Juan's playing, right? Because he's got this great spirit, this amazing artistic spirit about him. But he's doing it in a way that's real, and he's getting better very, very quickly. And that's, back to our original question here from Richard. That's, I think, how to get out of that beginner's mindset is just start performing, start doing it in front of people, get some skin in the game. Like you said, that rhythmic vocabulary, that almost only comes from doing it in real time. Even if you're a solo pianist, like we have some people like, I don't want to play with a band. What do I do?
Yeah.
Go stream yourself playing in front of like where a red light is on, or
go perform.
Go to the mall and play at the piano at the mall or whatever. Just go play for
Nordstrom's
people.
has some good solo piano gigs.
They do, man. But go do it for real with real skin in the game, and that you're going to kind of realize, oh, I don't know some things as well as I thought I did.
Yeah.
And I'm getting direct feedback from an audience.
Yeah. I mean, what do they say? Basketball, a shooter shoots. And a lot of people think we're talking about, Steph Curry broke the 3-point record last night, which is an amazing thing. Probably the greatest shooter of all time. But I think a shooter shoots, and a lot of times that's applied, for those of you that don't follow basketball, to not Steph Curry hitting at a high percentage, to a really good shooter when they are missing, actually. First of all, the greatest 3-point shooter is missing.
He's taking a lot of threes.
60% of the time, like a baseball player.
What is it? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take?
Oh, you go to the same dentist I do.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
That's right. But I mean, the idea of a shooter shoots, that's more about like when you're failing. It's really easy, to get up when everything's going right and to perform. And once you have everything perfect, then to go to the mall and play. But your example with Juan of like putting himself out there, and then what's attached to that is he's progressing really fast. And, in the Open Studio Pro world, you're able to sort of see how different people progress. I bet that that's a continual thing. Those who put themselves out, progress a lot. Just like the shooter who shoots a lot, even when they're missing, somehow they start making it at a certain point.
Yeah, and
then all of a sudden their percentage goes up.
And it doesn't even seem to matter if it's like, people are obviously, the more you put yourself out there, the more comfortable you are, just the sort of faster that muscle gets worked. Yeah. But I even tell people like, record it on your phone for yourself.
Yeah.
Or send it to me, just me, and we can just talk about it, just the two of us. And because
that's true, because sometimes you'll come in here with some things and be like, hey, check this out, we gotta laugh at this.
Oh, never. Come on. And then just the act of sort of performing for something or for someone, or even if it's just for you. I mean, I do this in my own practice. I'll just record myself and say like, this is a performance in my mind. I can't stop and fix something. I can't start over. This is what it is.
That's great. All right, here we've got another one. And you can put some more questions in. We're coming close to the end of an hour. Which is what we have today. But thank you guys so much for these awesome questions. This is really, I think, the best way, to answer things in real time and to explain about, what Jazz Piano for Beginners is and kind of what our concepts are. Is your new Jazz Piano for Beginner a systematic method to learn the concepts, tools in the right order prior to start playing jazz standards? Well, we certainly hope so if we get our job right. It's not a yes, it is. Certainly to start playing jazz standards. It is not a jazz standards course in that we get into a lot of jazz standards. It's really to put you in a position to what inevitably will be a lifetime journey of learning, jazz standards. But remember, like what we call jazz standards includes blues and bebop and, Wayne Shorter tunes and certainly the Tin Pan Alley and George Gershwin. I mean, really whatever you want to play in the jazz idiom, which we're very inclusive on that thing. So I would say yes.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, systematic method scares me a little bit in that if FID think there's like, one course anywhere or one book anywhere that's like, follow this system and then you'll sound like Art Tatum. That's never going to happen. That's not how life works. But
no, but I don't
there is a method to building on like a system in that we build from the ground up.
Yeah.
How you could start with this.
It's our system.
It's definitely not how you might finish it, but it's going to give you, I think, a foundation to start building that house on.
But it's our system, and it is a systematic method. We're not saying this is the greatest ever. We believe strongly in it, or no, not even the great. We're not saying it's the only way, but it's definitely like a system in terms of like the concepts that we introduce. And, it's definitely in the right order. I'll say this, like in terms of like jumping into more advanced standards or something, we're not like, if you want to be like, I'm playing all the things you are on 3 keys by the end of the first week. No, this is not that.
As it should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's very foundational and we're big believers in like really getting the fundamentals. And getting a strong foundation. So being a little bit conservative in terms of what you're doing. Like we start with AC blues. We could have started with a B flat blues. We could have started with a bebop blues. Mm-hmm. But because of our strong belief in getting a feel for the form, for the groove, for the balance of like playing, of getting your hands. I mean, such a big issue for beginners of jazz piano, even if you've done a lot of classical playing or other playing, is independence of the hands in the way that jazz requires it. Like a lot of that stuff we take for granted, and we had to go back as we examine how we're presenting this. Is like, well, where does a beginner student that can play piano, where do they like where do their skills lie with independence of the hands? Because what jazz demands in that with the improvisatory nature is very different. But it's super exciting because you can build up with that.
It's true. And someone here is asking about the Jazz Piano Jumpstart course versus the Jazz Piano for Beginners course, which one to do. And we're actually getting answers from members here.
Good.
Yeah, the Jumpstart is actually a little bit more basic than this Jazz Piano for Beginners. The Jumpstart is literally like, this is an interval. Like this is a half step. This is a whole step. That's where it starts. And the Jazz Piano for Beginners assumes you know just the basics of here's where C is. This is a quarter note. This is, you know, like the Jazz Piano Jumpstart is a little bit more in that very, very, you know, introductory to music more than even jazz piano.
Right.
It's meant to really get you going. And actually, for those of you who don't know, those three sort of beginner to intermediate course pipelines that we have, they lead one right into the other. So Jazz Piano Jumpstart leads directly into Jazz Piano for Beginners. It was designed that way. And Jazz Piano for Beginners was designed to lead directly into elements of jazz piano.
Right.
Those three are just a little train there that our Open Studio members can take right in a row. And then once you're through elements of jazz piano, then you could start sort of picking and choosing. We actually have a whole Pathways product now that gives you all of these other satellite courses that you can choose from. But those three are kind of like the core concepts to give you like that full foundation ready to go. Start to what we say, soup to nuts. What was that?
Soup to I didn't know what that was.
I don't know what I don't know.
I mean, I kind of understand what it means, you know, A to Z. Yeah, and so that's the beauty of the Piano Access Pass is if you're not sure if I mean, we do get that question a lot. Like, do I need to go back to jazz? First of all, you can just watch a free lesson for Jazz Piano Jumpstart or Jazz Piano for Beginners, and that'll give you a feel for where you are. But you can also get the Piano Access Pass, which is very affordable monthly fee, and that'll give you access to all the piano courses. So then you can start, if you're like, I know I'm a beginner and I think I want to start all the way at the beginner because I'm a very comprehensive, complete person. Start at Jazz Piano Jumpstart and you're going through, and if you're like, oh, you can just kind of go through it quickly. You can kind of skip through it, and then you get to Jazz Piano for Beginners. So that kind of takes that out of the equation. And as always, we're big believers in fitting folks with the right course for them. So if you get any course and it's not a good fit, it's too advanced, too beginner, whatever, at any time, just we will gladly give you your money back.
Legendary customer service.
We have legendary, Go. Just, you know what? Google. We're not even gonna tell you where to go because this is how independent it is. Google Open Studio Jazz reviews, and these are
so proud of this.
Verified. Well, because this is what the
it's
what
pretty
the folks
dope,
are saying.
It's pretty good.
You know, just you'll see what folks say about not only our products, and there's a lot of Adam Manis on there lately, though. Very Adam. Somebody's been a busy little bee in the content department. But yeah, you can kind of see what's happening there, and as always, our excellent team. Dan, Rachel, Sam, everybody, Ian can assist you if you have any other questions, or Adam or myself. Oh, I have one more queued up here, and we've got 3 minutes. So, what do you think of that? Actually, this is a Doppio. You've seen Doppio keyboards. What about Doppio questions? From Seji Beji or Siggy Biggy. I am mostly self-taught, and over the many years of playing, I stick mostly to blues. How do I break out of sticky patterns I've used to and incorporate other things in my playing? Thank you. Oh no. I think, being stuck in blues, I like to look at this as like, okay, stuck in blues, but now that's what a great place to be stuck.
Yeah, I was like, what's wrong with that?
What a great foundation, yeah. But now that you want to go out, then this is the reason we start with the blues here. Like, that gives you so much language, confidence, harmonic understanding, foundational, understanding of the form and the feel to be able to tackle anything. People think, oh, it's so simple. Oh, really? Well, you can spend a lifetime playing the blues, but it gives you, like with a lot of our core concepts in terms of shell, root plus shell, and then later on shell post pretty and those kinds of things. The blues is the easiest place to learn those things and to really learn them deeply. So you should be well set up to move on to other tunes, Yardbird Suite and these kind of things. Sticky patterns. I mean, like a lot of times if this stuff sounds good, sticky's good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this just might be part of your personality. Segabeji, however you say that. No, but you might also
Segabeji.
consider like spending some time with players that are that use both like another style of music and more blues language, like someone like Cannonball Adderley. Like spend a lot of time with Cannonball
Ever heard of him?
and listen to someone who can incorporate like very flawlessly some bebop language with some blues language and has a very modern touch with that. Or, you know, I mean, even someone like Sullivan Fortner, if you want someone even a little bit more modern, you know, or John Batiste, right? And where you have that kind of connection to the past and things you might already be incorporated in, but more of a different way to approach that. That's what I mean, because it is like, you know, the blues language is part of Black American music language as a whole. So you can't, it's not like there's just a separate box for that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, honestly. And that just might be something you're drawn to, and that's part of your playing. Make it your own thing, you know?
Exactly. Daniel M says, what are some things you guys did to expand harmonic vocabulary, and how do you apply that to translating ideas in your head onto the instrument? I mean, you know, a lot of the harmonic vocabulary I came from are two things that jump out. One is learning tunes, like challenging things for me at different periods, you know, be it bebop, Wayne Shorter tunes, certainly different standards, but things that were just a little bit outside of like, where it was kind of like, what is that? Like, instead of like learning it theoretically, what a, you know, a G7, flat 13 sharp 9, like being faced with that on a tune where I'm like dropping the needle, like, wait, what is that chord?
Yep.
Is it major? Is it, you know, like picking it apart like that and that expands your harmonic understanding and conception and your ear training. And then that inevitably leads to vocabulary, because that's giving you the framework and the foundation for that.
Yeah, Daniel, learn a tune from a record and try to get the harmony exactly with what the pianist is playing. I really want to do Bill Evans' Waltz for Debbie with my trio. I love that tune, right?
Good.
So I was like, I don't think I've ever learned it from the actual original recording. So I've been learning it from the record, and a lot of the stuff in all the books are not right. It's not correct.
No bueno.
At least from what Bill played. But
yeah,
that I've learned so much in just learning that tune from the record, and I've learned my harmonic vocabulary is increasing even, you know, this week from doing that. So first of all, it's always something that it's a journey, but you know, just again, like everything else, like go back to the records. It's hard, man. It's hard to do it from the records, but it's so good for you, and it'll stay with you for your life if you do it from the records.
And the great part about this, your second part of your question, how do you apply that to translating ideas in your head onto the instrument? This part will come automatically. Like that, this is like, if you approach this in the way that we're talking about, you won't have to directly apply what you've learned. That will start to become an option for, like, that's the whole thing of like playing what you hear. You have to hear it and have some conception. It doesn't mean you have to have a total harmonic or theoretical understanding of it, but you need your ears to be able to wrap themselves around, what is that? You know, what does that sound like? What can I do over that? You got to mess it up and try to find it. Then you got to come back the next day and then be like, wait, can I play it here? And then it has to be like in line with, you know, wherever it's coming. So like it starts to, you know, it's vocabulary, it's language. It starts to become something that's available to you, but you can't just read a new word or a new sentence and be like, oh, now I can use it anytime. It will come out organically once you understand the meaning, once you know how to say it, once you have the confidence to apply it.
Totally. Great questions.
We got one more we're going to go out with, and this is from our good friend. And this is always interesting when Chris doesn't give a joke. Well, maybe this is a joke. Let's read it.
Yeah, I don't know. See, here's the thing, Chris. When you're always joking, you're always being sarcastic. Don't know when you're being serious or not.
Which is the best option for someone who wants to learn piano as a second instrument for learning harmony? I mean, I think that in terms of which course, I think that these courses, none of these are actually, when we first came up with Jazz Piano for Beginner, one of the big targets I had was folks that played other instruments, because they were like, I want to do your lessons, but they're too hard. I need to start the beginning. Like, and I knew they knew a little bit of piano, but they just didn't know, you know, how to sort of get in at the beginner level. So, I mean, in terms of courses, I would say that. But in general, like, what's successful for a lot of other instrumentalists is approaching it the same way a pianist would do it, but maybe with a little bit of a lighter amount of time on the technical stuff. You know what I mean? Yep. So because you're trying to hear the harmony. I mean, if you play trumpet, you can conceptualize harmony, but you can't actually play harmony because you only play one note at the same time. So at the piano, you can do that. It's as simple as like learning 3 notes or 2 notes. There's harmony, you know, ever heard of it? So it can start to also, visualize and through your ears, you start to, and then you can break it apart, play it on your instrument or whatever. But it's very much the same process as pianist. It's just, you don't need to go as deeply.
Yeah, totally. I agree. The JPB is a great place for a second instrument.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you, Adam, for joining me here. I was almost going to roll solo on this, which would not have been nearly as edifying and jovial an experience. But I hope we answered some questions. I hope that those of you that are not on the Jazz Panel for Beginner train have a better feel for it, and will join us over there whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready. At the beginning of the year, you get it now, and then start at the new year. It's a fun instrument that, I mean, the amount of joy this thing, what do they call about ROI, return on investment, we talk about in the business world. Like the ROI of a piano and like being, I mean, it's not just the piano. On its own, it doesn't really do a lot for you. But once you start to learn, I mean, just basic. All right, thanks y'all for being here.
Later, folks.
Peace.